from LinkedIn. Interestingly, Bruce is a lawyer working for a networking company. So I'm interested to hear how he's going to segue those things. Has a degree from Creighton University School of Law, and acts as a senior counsel for LinkedIn. And so we're excited to hear about how to use your network in the digital age, and either through LinkedIn or other means. So Bruce, welcome.
Welcome. Yes, thank you. So as Todd mentioned, my name is Bruce Wray, attorney with LinkedIn. Law school and the practice of law was sort of a later transition. I worked for about 10 years in IT, completed master's degrees in mathematics and computer science, and then I'm sort of like, what do I want to be when I grow up? And it's sort of been a roundabout path to end up at LinkedIn, but happy to be here and happy to talk about sort of what digital networking looks like, different tools and platforms. Obviously, as a representative of LinkedIn and our coaching efforts, the slides in that are going to be focused on LinkedIn, but it's sort of going to apply in any state of digital networking and sort of what's necessary or needed when you're in the job hunt or using tools to sort of build an online presence. So we'll sort of run through what LinkedIn is. How many people have a LinkedIn profile already? Okay. Brenda, when's the last time you updated your LinkedIn profile?
About a month ago.
About a month ago. That's great. One of the best advice pieces I got when I was younger was to sort of like continuously update your resume, right? In part, it's hard sometimes to go back and pull together the big topics, the big projects that you've worked on, the things that are resume worthy, noteworthy. When you've not touched your resume, you've not touched, you've not had to apply for a position or worried about applying for a position for a couple of years, a decade. Like the longer you've been in a role, the harder it is sometimes to pull out some of those details. One example that I'll give sort of on that, we do these outreach coaching events for a lot of military groups, and oftentimes with those we do the presentation part at the beginning, and then we sort of do like a one-on-one or an individual small group profile reviews. And so I was working with this gentleman that was retiring out of the Army, and he had been doing logistics for the Army for 25 years. And he had like 4 words on his 25 years experience running logistics in the Army. It's like a bullet, 25 years experience, logistics operations manager. And I was like, dude, you have got there's way more backstory behind that one little bullet point. Like you've dropped tanks out of airplanes in hostile and like the logistics that you're talking about in the Army, those are going to they would blow companies that are dealing with operations and logistics and handling procurement, all of this stuff. They would blow all of these companies out of the water with the depth of experience that you've got, and all you're giving them is 25 years. And so make sure that you've got meat and depth on it. Looking back here, LinkedIn's vision in this space is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. That's part of these outreach, but it's part of what makes LinkedIn different, is to take sort of a skills first approach, to take to sort of build on I had a LinkedIn profile 20 years ago when we're coming up on our 20th anniversary or 20th birthday. And at the time it was sort of just like a digital resume, right? And it is sort of in that way, but it is a lot more of a living and breathing environment for use, for networking, for outreach, for building your personal brand in ways that a single sheet resume probably wouldn't be. So LinkedIn, in comparison to some of the other social media platforms, right? It's definitely got a professional bend. It's not the donut examples are just great on these slides. Sorry. So when you're looking at some of the other social media platforms that you can, that are available, obviously with LinkedIn, they're typically going to take more of a professional stance. So like if you're interested in operating a bakery or in, professional reviews of different bakeries, operating tips of how these pieces fit together, marketing for those particular areas. That's going to be a little bit more the bend that you're going to find on LinkedIn for it. It is the world's largest professional network. 850 million members, 58 million companies, 200 plus countries and territories that LinkedIn operates in. The depth and breadth of what's available on LinkedIn is fairly extensive, right? So when we start talking about the digital networking aspect, what are we looking at? What are we doing on LinkedIn? It's an outreach method for connecting with clients, contacts, other professionals. It's a way to stay in contact with folks that you've worked with or that you've built a network out with over a course of years, right? It's when I was younger, I had somewhere downstairs, probably, I still have a stack of business cards for people that I had contacts with, right? And that was sort of like the way that you have a handle on how you would reach back out to somebody. The problem with a stack of business cards is exactly that, right? It's a stack of business cards. It's sitting in a box in the basement somewhere right now, I'm sure, just in storage and gathering dust, and it's static. So those contacts aren't probably current anymore. Wolfgang, that I worked with at the chip manufacturing company in 2002 in Germany, is probably not with the same entity that he was 20 years ago. LinkedIn and digital networking, it sort of allows you to maintain those connections as they evolve and move. And so a lot of the opportunities that you're going to see are going to come in play from not just those first tier connections, not just the people that you have direct connections with, but the people who know people. So some of the other stuff to call out here, the professional content. How many of you guys have used LinkedIn to look for positions or look for roles?
I do all the time.
Okay.
Not for me, for students.
For students, sure.
I like that.
Christopher, I see your hand up. And what type of opportunities have you been in the market for? What are you looking?
So actually, I used LinkedIn to actually procure myself a brand new job that I'm currently waiting for contracts to sign for. It's working with College Possible and AmeriCorps, working with kids, teaching them how to apply for colleges, and hopefully getting kids in lower income families and lower income schools to apply to colleges.
You sort of breaking down some of those barriers that a lot of times, it's one of those oddities. Like I was I don't know if I qualify as first gen student, but like I didn't have a lot of family knowledge about getting into colleges or applying to colleges. And at the time period that I was doing it, it was like you got a paper copy of the application mailed to you, you filled it out by hand, you mailed it back in and waited, but it didn't have a lot of that like institutional knowledge about like what a FAFSA is, how you fill a FAFSA out, what type of information you're going to need, like what type of activities are going to be a good focal point, right? So like that's one of those areas that doing outreach with area high schools, for example, that's one of those areas that you can sort of help put breadcrumbs out, right? Because it's a lot easier to start opening doors when you're aware that there's a door there. Because when you coming into it, it just looks like a solid wall, and there's no explanation for how you get behind that. So we're going to talk about some of the issues that or some of the benefits and I'm going to say pro tip type pieces, but things that you can do to your profile to make it sort of stand out, right? And this is based off of one of our coaches event, Rock Your Profile type events. And so we'll sort of run through what is sort of like an idealized profile, what are people looking at, what sort of catches the most attention, right? So professional level headshots, getting tight focal on the vase, up to 9 times more connection requests, 21 times more profile views, 36 times more messages. It is definitely one of those areas, like if you've ever received a request from somebody, the first thing you're going to do is you start to like inquire as to who it is. Do I know this person? Do I recognize this person? Like, did I meet them? Where did I meet them? And one of the first visual aspects on that, right, is just that solid headshot for those photos. So making sure that you've got a good foundation with that. There is an option to be able to record your name, so you can get pronunciation and make a great first impression. It is 10 seconds, obviously relatively short. Work on limiting background noise, working on spacing of where the phone is as far as your HIPAA recording on it. There's an option to be able to add in pronouns. How many folks use pronouns or have those as allies listed for? Yeah, it's one of those areas that Eleanor, I see your hand up. Yeah, it's one of those areas that's showing up for a lot more visibility, right? And it sort of gives a little bit of guidance for hiring managers as to the importance of respect shown, right? Now, the cover story is sort of an option to be able to add a short video. In addition to the cover story, obviously this is a lot of multimedia type items here, but you're going to have a lot of sort of like the elevator pitch, right, of what you're looking for, what you're engaged in, what you're trying to accomplish with these particular with the profile at any given point in time, right? One of the main differences with a digital profile on LinkedIn or other platforms, but one of the main differences on a resume, right, is sort of in the targeted approach. Like the old school adage of the purpose of a cover letter is to get somebody to read your resume. The purpose of a resume is to get somebody to give you an interview. The purpose of an interview is to get the job, right? Sort of this like tiered out, stepped out piece. LinkedIn functions a little bit differently because it's going to be a little bit more holistic, right? You're going to have the possibility for more information on it, more depth. There's no need to necessarily keep it down to a single page. It also speaks continuously, right? Whereas with a resume that you've got prepared for a single position or a single role, LinkedIn exists and is there and is essentially broadcasting your professional presence at all times, right? So there's less of a tailoring that happens on LinkedIn necessarily, but more of a broader piece. It's showing up, I think, in the video here. There is also an option for open to, yeah, maybe not. I thought that was on that one. That's not the background piece for it. Industry, you can add industry details. You can add help to sort of like narrow it down. So a lot of initial hiring, a lot of the hiring process happens with a lot of, I'm going to say, sort of automated filtering on a lot of things, right? So I know when I was prior to LinkedIn, I was at PayPal, and hiring for an open position, you would get thousands and thousands and thousands of resumes. And the hiring managers don't have capacity or bandwidth to sort through all of those. The recruiters that are assisting the hiring managers don't have capacity or bandwidth to sort through all of those. So there's almost invariably on the resume stage a certain level of like automated preconditioning, right, to sort of like highlight and try to find or identify some of the better fit resumes that are in there before they then go into more of a human or a high touch review process. One of the aspects of LinkedIn that's beneficial is, and we'll get to this, I think, a little bit later when we look at some of the job search functions. You have ways to be able to, like, if you're looking for a particular role, whether it's active, like you're in a I would like to have a new role or a new position within the next month, 3 months, 6 months, whatever the case might be, or if you're sort of just like in a passive, I just want to like keep a feel for what's out there and look for opportunities that like maybe of real, and I really enjoy the job I've got right now, but I'm looking for, I might be interested in a position if the role was right. So sort of two ways that the digital networking pieces fit in on that is the outreach from the companies themselves, right? So recruiters that are helping source or find talent for these companies will reach out to you and sort of, it gets you past a lot of that initial, I'm going to say the early automated type screening pieces that happen. The other thing that can happen is with the saved searches that are available when you're using the platform, you can get notified of new positions basically as soon as they pop up. So if you've used LinkedIn to go in and search for a job, there's a capability to be able to save a search as a recurring notification. So you can get notified as often as you'd like. You can get notified as the minute that there's a new position in there. You can get notified once a day. But that sort of assists in getting your application and your presentation to the company upfront and early before they're inundated with thousands and thousands and thousands of other profiles, other resumes that are invariably going to be coming in. This was what I was calling out earlier, is the open to work piece. There's an option in there to be able to indicate that you're open to work. This can be shared with anybody and everybody on the platform. It can be shared with just recruiters. There's a lot of options to be able to sort of like raise your profile and visibility to folks on the platform. A compelling summary. This is sort of akin to the video portion that we had initially. This is sort of your about section, your elevator pitch, but in a narrative format, right? What are your objectives? It's also a place to sort of bring your whole self to potential companies or potential entities as to what you're interested in, what's important to you. And then additional content. So how many people have posted content on LinkedIn? Okay. Brenda, what type of content?
I post things about Midland quite often.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we share something, our main site does, I'll post that.
Okay. Christopher, I saw your hand go up as well.
Yeah, I actually posted some marketing for this event recently on LinkedIn.
Okay. Good. Yeah, so posting content, posting details is one of the ways that you sort of build out a professional brand. This is, I'm going to say in my younger days, when weblogs were still called weblogs as opposed to a blog, and when blogs were an actual thing as opposed to, I remember when tweets were considered like a microblog. That's how old school that space is. But considering and conceptualizing essentially like an online brand or an online persona, what your interests are, what your research deals with, what your publications are working with, all of those things are sort of areas to build engagement and build interaction with folks on LinkedIn and on these digital platforms. Which is sort of the content here in terms of adding rich content for both video commentary, white pages and other material that you can set up and share for folks. This is sort of not to say not exciting. This is sort of more of the like bread and butter portions of it, right? Where where LinkedIn is a little bit more analogous to a traditional resume type piece. One of the major differences though is you're sort of able to like add more depth and more detail to it. It will automatically sort of condense and allow folks to drill down and get that more detail without having, a 100-page long scroll for it. But having details and information, this is sort of my own, I'm not going to pass this off as my own, I guess. This was advice that I got from a mentor in my career, but he wanted much more meat on resumes than most people tend to put. He was not a fan of the bullet points and the brief action descriptions of what you did. He was definitely one that wanted much more and encouraged much more, I'm going to say meat. But when you worked on projects, showing the scope and the impact of what those projects are, right? Like, it's not just that you implemented or assisted in implementing an electronic medical record for the state of Iowa. It's the fact that, you know, it's an $86 million project that impacts the lives of 2,000 individuals under Department of Health and Human Services care, and you've got different outreach pieces and the scope and impact in detail, right? The pharmacy project that I worked on wasn't just a pharmacy project. It was a $9 million pharmacy implementation that affected the administration and dosing of 80,000 medications, and did pre-screening, and like all of the actual volume and the impact of what your work is there. So I one of the benefits and one of the highlight pieces with LinkedIn is that you're no longer confined necessarily by that like short form. I've got to try to fit everything onto one page, or, you know, like if I go to the second page, I've got to use absolutely every inch of the second page and add enough filler until I have way more than I can fit on 2 pages, and then I'm cutting stuff to fit there. Volunteer experience. How many folks are active in different volunteer type organizations? Okay. This is an area that a lot of folks don't necessarily highlight or think about to have or include on their LinkedIn profiles, but it's definitely an area where it can help with outreach. It can help with finding other folks that are interested in similar areas. LinkedIn will do a sort of a people you may know, or people you may be interested in following, people you may be interested in connecting with. And a lot of that gets built, you know, sort of in the back end algorithm type places, but your activities, your interests are all going to like play into how those pieces pull together and how they make the connections. One of the areas where connections come into play, right, is not just in folks that I know directly, but in positions that get shared and then reposted or reshared, right? So I may not get a connection to a particular role or a position by somebody that I know directly, but I know somebody who knows somebody, and I'm able to make a connection, or I'm able to make that next step out, or they share a position, and that you know that position makes it through sort of the concentric circles to end up, you know, on my feed or in an area where I'm going to see about it and might be able to sort of reach out or gain some more knowledge that way. Skills and endorsements are also an area that is definitely growing. LinkedIn is putting a lot of effort in building sort of skills first hiring. So not just credentials, not just certifications, but the actual practical skills that come into play tied to and for those. So skills are sort of the self-identified, these are things that I've got. Endorsements are something that somebody else is going to essentially sort of almost offer a testimonial for your experience or background with. Yeah, location, education, publications, accomplishments, all of these are going to be areas open, and to be able to sort of fill out and flesh out that full perspective of what you're bringing to LinkedIn and bringing to the digital networking space. Where we're at on time, I'm going to pause here for just a second to see if there's any questions, if there's any comments, thoughts.
I love how you talk about, you know, making those connections, even though you might not be connected to somebody directly, and finding jobs, because I feel like I find a lot of things that way. You know, I'm building connections, or people are adding me, and I'm seeing, you know, what they're seeing, which is really, really cool. And so I always tell students, I'm like, yes, make sure that you're adding all these connections, because they might have connections that you need. And so this is nice that it, you know, definitely verifies that.
Yeah. Yeah. How many of you have for this the students in the list or on here, how many of you have done an informational interview? Actually, scratch the student part of it for everybody. How many of you guys have done informational interviews? Eleanor, what was your informational interview?
Oh, I did one way back when with my dad's company, because he works at a biomedical company and I'm interested in writing. So I talked to a technical writer there just to see if that is a potential, this was probably like 8 years ago, if that was a potential career path that would be a good fit for kind of my skill set and what I was interested in.
Yeah, there's writing and there's technical writing, right? Like it's
Yes,
a
exactly. Still maybe down the line, but it wasn't the path at the time.
Yeah. I think William, I think I saw your hand up as well.
Yes, mine was for a class, and so I was asked to look into a career field that I was interested in, and so I talked to Dan Hayes, who is a theater professor here, and then our director of the arts at the time, who was Ann Sorensen, and I was looking to go into arts administration, and so I talked to them about the ins and outs, what degrees to get, and what classes to take, and again, networking and finding connections. And so I've actually got a few jobs from just a few people reaching out to me and saying, hey, come check this out.
Yeah, it's interesting. If I look back at my career, the number of different roles and jobs that I've had, almost all of them have some sort of handoff from somewhere, from somebody along the line. So the usual piece that I make, pitch, I guess, that I make on informational interviews, and this is sort of dovetailing back with my background in information assurance, computer security type pieces. The easiest thing to do is to get somebody talking about themselves, right? I, at one point in time, taught at ITT in their computer science and in their bachelor's information assurance program. And it's one of the capstone programs, one of the capstone pieces. The students had to go out and sort of pick a company, pick a location in Omaha, and they do sort of like a physical security assessment, like what they could see from the outside of the company. What, did they have car stops around? Did they have gates that were locked, or did they have open access pieces? Not necessarily like enough to draw attention or get themselves arrested on the property, but enough of like a physical surveillance type thing. And then also sort of the same thing on an information security standpoint from their electronic presence, from the internet presence. What they've got there is sort of just a high level, like outside scan type thing. And one of the students, the location he had picked was the Shadow Lake Mall, right? Is everybody familiar with Shadow Lake down in Papillion, right? And so the student is sort of driving around after hours at this mall, and he's sort of like taking notes in his little notebook, and he's writing down what he's seen about like how, because it's it's a large area, it's a large, there's access areas in the back where the trucks show up and where deliveries get, and there's large parking for customers in the front and all of those types of things. And he's sort of like noting all of these things. And the overnight information security guard pulls up next to him, rolls his window down, do the old school roll his window down, right? And he's like, so hey, everything okay? Do I need help? Is anything going on? And James just rolled right in with, no, I'm working on a capstone program for my bachelor's degree, and I've got, we're supposed to be doing this type of this type of thing, and I'm trying to get some information on this. And the guy was like, oh my gosh, cool, come with me. And literally just walked him through the back of every building that he wanted to, and spent, I don't know how much time literally just walking him through, because people like to talk about themselves. People like to be important. People like to be recognized, right? So like the easiest way to get somebody talking about themselves is to say, hey, Todd, I'd love to hear about what took you into education, and what took you into this particular role that you've got. And, I see that on your LinkedIn resume, on your LinkedIn background, your LinkedIn profile, you worked at X company, and I'm interested in some of the, I'm interested in how that company works in this particular space. If you don't mind, can I buy you a coffee and learn about this? And it's not every time, it's not 100% foolproof, but like, it's the thought process of the easiest way to steal a TV from Walmart is to show up in the back with a truck and a clipboard, right? Like if you show up with a truck and a clipboard, they're going to help you load what you want to take from the back of the store. You get somebody talking about themselves, you get somebody opening up, and just soak it all in at that point, right? Like it's both learning about new roles, it's learning about how the company operates. so the law firm that I ended up hired at right out of law school is sort of a mid-sized national firm. They didn't do on-campus interviews. They didn't hire law students anymore. They had a big program prior to the downturn in 2007, 2008, and had canceled they had killed the program. So it hadn't been in effect for 5-8 years at the point that I was graduating from law school. And as an older student, I didn't fit the profile and the mold for what a lot of folks were looking for when they were going through on-campus interviews, right? I wasn't the traditional student. I didn't have a resume that was straight through from undergrad to law school, and I didn't apply correctly. Is the other piece that I'll say as far as the on-campus interviews go. I sort of applied like I would for any job that I wanted. I was like, ooh, this is a place that I want to work. I want to apply for this group and I want to apply for this. And the folks that were successful with the on-campus interviews sort of scattershot to everybody. They took one resume and to whom it may concern, and they sent it to all 75 law firms that were coming in for on-campus interviews, and they got hired by one of them. And I didn't get hired by anybody. And I was really downtrodden and sort of struggling with the I don't know, I'm maybe leaving a successful IT career to go to law school wasn't my best bet here. I don't know what's going to happen. And I had a law professor that put me in contact with somebody in the banking department at QTech Rock. I have zero interest in banking. I worked at a bank in high school. Banks are cool. Banks sort of put me into the business. I graduated with an undergraduate degree in business, and they sort of led me away from teaching high school math to working at a bank because the banks are where the money are. But I had no practical interest in banking law. But she put me in contact with somebody. I went in and I met with them, and I got an hour and a half's worth of information about the firm and the way the firm operates and how the firm hires and all this sort of insider view and perspective. And then I had a second law professor that sort of put me in contact with somebody that was in the IPIT group within the firm. And intellectual property and information technology was sort of right up my bread and butter. That was exactly what I was looking for. That's exactly what I had gone to law school for, was to sort of figure out a way to leverage a master's degree in computer science and also work in the legal field. And I was able to use a lot of that information from the informational interview that I got in that first round to sort of give myself a leg up when I was having conversations and discussions the second time around. So never, don't disrespect somebody's time, and definitely glean as much and gain as much information as you can out of every opportunity that you get for it. So thought leadership and LinkedIn. LinkedIn definitely is striving for everybody to bring forth their full self onto LinkedIn, and to bring your full person onto LinkedIn, right? And how do you build thought leadership? One of the ways that you can help build and work in a digital networking age is to sort of start sharing updates, start sharing information about what interests you, what projects you're working on, what areas of if William, if you're interested in art administration or theater type administration, what's happening within those areas? What are some of the hot topics that are being discussed? Some of those can just be reshares, right? So you can just reshare a post. You can also add comment and your own thoughts on these as you're going. There's also adding deeper content and more published or polished material for not necessarily always white paper level, but getting information out there and sort of building this presence and building engagement with folks that are active and interested in that, right? So it's sort of a two-way street, both for what you're posting, but also what you're consuming on the platform and what pieces you're commenting on or adding additional thought to. Best practices for sharing updates. Authentic voice is sort of really key and critical, right? Posting frequently is going to keep a lot of the material up and relevant. And then sort of dealing with it like a conversation and building out a lot of back and forth. Let's see, where are we at for slides on this? I think we're coming up on the end here. Oh, there we go, 30 or 32, yeah. How many of you guys have, Brenda, I know you said you had done some publishing on LinkedIn. Anybody else? Shares? Okay. Todd, do you have any thoughts or comments to add on that?
Type things, and gotten good reaction, good shares out of it. So.
That's good. Good. Any other sort of questions? I think we're probably oh yeah, following companies, influencers, and folks that are on there. There's a follow and there's a connect. So connecting sort of creates that first tier connection to an individual. Following them just sets it up so that you're going to see more of them. But you can follow both companies and individuals that are on it. One note I'll make on the experience, I guess, is probably the area that it fits in most. So as you're creating and tying into like you're creating your profile or editing your profile, for entities that have a presence on LinkedIn, you're able to actually sort of create the direct connection to that. And a lot of times the easiest way to tell that is if you're on your experience, you'll see the actual logo or sign for that particular entity. If you've tapped into that correctly, it's going to better be able to both suggest connections, but also, you know, it's better able to, I'm going to say, connect you into the alumni pool of those particular entities, right? So whether it's Midland University, whether it's Union Pacific, Streck Laboratories, all of these are going to be places and companies, and they're going to have a profile and a presence there, and you're sort of able to better connect with folks from that area. So I think that is probably all that I have. If anybody's got any last minute questions.
I saw recently where you can not just follow the company, but also indicate somewhere where you would be interested in working for that company.
Yes.
So that's on this screen, though, on the company profile screen or company.
Let me double check that, because I think, of course, it's pulling it up here, but I believe, I know when I followed companies, a lot of the, good on that one. So I can follow it there. There's also a learn more. Options for jobs. Where are we going here? You can create, so like if you've, I don't know if this is not going to show up super well, right? But you've got the option to follow a particular company or an organization, right? Mm-hmm. There's also on the down below that there's going to be home, about, products, posts, jobs, mm-hmm. Sort of things from the company standpoint. You can create alert notifications sort of by particular company or by particular. So when you're doing the job alert notifications, if you do it from the job search, that's one option. You can also go directly to the company and then say, I want to know about jobs from this company that fit this particular description, right? I don't know if that's exactly what you're looking for, or if there's an additional way to be able to sort of, I'm going to say, flag it for recruiters for the company. I think is more what you were talking about. I'd have to check on from a product standpoint. I can't remember.
I actually started doing it to see how it worked, and I couldn't figure it out. But sounds like we all need to test, go out and find a company and see if we can figure out how to. You'd like to work there.
Yeah. So if you go to about,
mm-hmm.
This is not going to show up super well. Scrolling down about halfway on the about is a section that says interested in working with us in the future.
There it is.
And you can sort of indicate I'm interested, and it'll, there's I'm going to say, how can I share that?
So then their recruiters could probably look and see who's indicated that and reach out to you if you meet their.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find, give me just a second to share this airdrop over there. I'm gonna try to airdrop something to myself on here. Shockingly, there's a LinkedIn article on how this works. So I figured if I could share it with the chat, that would be, and I'm gonna stop sharing here and see. Okay, looks like it's sent. There we go. And pop over to the chat. Shift this chat to everyone. Okay, there. Yeah, that's the LinkedIn help article on signaling interest of the company.
Awesome.
So I learned something today as well. I also I was at an event, a JAG Nebraska event about a month ago, and somebody came up with the I was talking about my stack of business cards, right? The digital business card. And I was like, it's so weird that LinkedIn doesn't have that. Like, there's got to be like, and I was like, I'm gonna have to go back and like find a product person and be like, hey, why don't we do this?
Mhm.
And it's actually already there. So for the digital business card thing, if you click on the search bar at the top, it'll pop up a little 4 square in the corner.
Mhm.
And if you click on that, it'll give you your own QR code. That is a direct link to share with people.
That's so funny because I've made my own kind of the step-by-step.
Yeah. And I was like, why doesn't LinkedIn do this? This is crazy. I need like, this is something I'm going to have to go back for. Oh, we already do. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I see it. There it is.
Where did you say that is?
So if you type, like, if you're on the mobile, you can, on the search bar at the top.
Okay.
If you click into it, it'll pop up a little 4 square emblem over on the far right-hand side.
Okay. Awesome.
And then
Thanks.
that's going to give you your QR code that you can save it to your photos. So I've got a copy. I added it to my signature line because I was like this.
Yeah, I
like,
saw that.
Yeah, but I didn't know about that until a month ago. So I'd been at LinkedIn
That's awesome.
for over a year at that point. Then
Genius.
yeah, I thought.
Genius.
All right. Any other questions? Anything else? Yeah.
I got a quick question.
Sure.
I saw because you had talked about like the differences between experiences and skills. I've been wanting to get into freelance technical arts designing. That's the position I'm at here in Midland. And I want to do some freelance set and light and sound designing. And I just don't know, would that be put under a skill or as experience?
So skills would sort of be like the abstract portion of it, right? So like you could put your your lighting and sound design skills under the skills or have endorsements for that. The experience is going to be much more like I worked on the 2022 Shakespeare on the Green sounds, that's going to be more the experience type stuff of like the actual, like either the event that you worked on or the entity that you worked at that event for. If it's volunteer, obviously it would go under volunteer, but it's sort of an area that can blend across all of those pieces to sort of, does that make sense?
Yeah, I had been trying to figure out where to put it on my LinkedIn for a while, and I just really didn't know the first place to start with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those areas that definitely like fits into a lot of different categories, right? So like, I'll use myself sort of as an example. At one point in time, I could read and understand probably 20 to 30 different programming languages. Some of them really esoteric. I really love Prolog. Nobody uses Prolog or understands Prolog. But those would be more like the skills type things or things that I could have endorsements in. Versus like, I'm proficient in reading and writing and understanding SQL, right? Primarily TSQL in the Microsoft environment, but also PLSQL for Oracle and other environments. that's going to be more like the skills or the endorsement pieces. And then the actual work that I did in that space as, either a database administrator or, report writing and generation and assisting with application development on those platforms are going to be more the experiences that I have under a particular area or field.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for the,
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
All right, any other questions for Bruce? Okay.
All right. Well, thank
Bruce,
you
Thank you
guys.
so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. That was really helpful.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yes. Thank you for having me.